Lesson 9.4, Graphing Sine and Cosine Functions. Our essential question: how do you explore characteristics, stretch and shrink, translate and reflect graphs of sine and cosine functions? There are 2 problems left on the next page for independent practice. Let's go ahead and take a closer look at those. So you are being asked to graph g of x equals 3 cosine 2x minus 1. First thing that we need to do is we need to identify our a. My a is 3. My b is 2. There is no parenthesis in it to tell me my h, so my h is 0, and my k is this minus 1. So before I can graph any of this, I need to find my amplitude, and amplitude is the equation, the absolute value of a. So I have the absolute value of 3, which is 3. So I know that my function is going to be 3 tall, but I can't graph any because I know I have this vertical change. So we're going to hold off on changing anything first. After my amplitude, I then have my period, which is 2 pi all over the absolute value of b. So I have 2 pi all over the absolute value of 2, which is 2 pi all over 2, which gives me pi. So that means that my cosine function will get as far as pi, and then it'll start repeating again. Because I see there's h's and k's, first thing we need to do is we need to find the midline, which is the formula y equals k, which meant it's y equals -1. So that meant my midline is going to move down to -1. It's no longer at the x. So I have an h that is telling me to do something. H is our horizontal that tells me how far left and right. Because it's 0, that meant that we had no horizontal shift, but I do have a k, and my k is a -1. K tells me how much up and down I am doing, which is a vertical shift, and because it's a -1, we're going down 1, which is why our line went down to where -1 lived. We need to make sure that our y's are appropriately labeled. I need to move down to where -1 is, and then from there, I need to be able to go 3 up and 3 down, which means I need to rescale these. I need to be able to include -1 and then 3 down from it, which means I need to make sure I have quite a few negatives. So I counted by ones, my -1, so here is my new midline. And from here, I know I will be able to go 3 down, so I know my mins will be down here, and I know I can go 3 up. I know my maxes will be up here. So let's go ahead and actually find all those points. So my 5 key points. This is a cosine function. Remember, sine and cosine have very different formulas and points, so you got to make sure you have the correct ones. Cosine only has 2 intercepts in a single period on the midline. So let's go ahead and look at those. They were originally x-intercepts when we knew them. They're not x-intercepts anymore. So here is our midline formula, taking into account the moved vertical transition. My b is a 2. My k is a -1. So my first midline point is pi fourths -1. So pi fourths -1, there's my first. My second intercept, the y value needs to take into consideration our vertical change. My b is a 2. My k is a -1. So my second intercept is at 3 pi fourths -1. So 3 pi fourths -1. And I know I'm right because the intercepts should be on this midline, and they both are. The period would have ended right here. So this is what should be repeated every period. So let's continue through and make sure those intercepts are repeated all the way through. Those are 2 points. I need 3 more. Cosine has 2 maxes. So let's go ahead and look at our first max. This is the formula of the first max that takes into account our vertical shift. My a is a 3, and my k is a -1. So my first max is at the coordinate point 0, 2. So here's 0, 2. My second max, this is taking into account the vertical shift. This was another max. My b is a 2. My a was a 3. My k was a -1. My second max is at the coordinate point pi 2. So here's pi 2. I need my fifth and final point, which is my min. This is the min taking into account the vertical shift that we need. The b is a 2. My a is a 3, and my k was a negative 1. So my min is pi halves negative 4. Pi halves 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 4. So this is what my cosine function looks like before it starts repeating after the pi. So I know I went as high as 2 and I went as low as negative 4. So after the 2, I got to go back down to my negative 4, and then I got to go back up to my 2, down to my negative 4, and that's the end of the graph. The other direction. I'm already at the 2. So now I got to go down to my negative 4, go back up to my 2, down to my negative 4, back up to my 2. So there is my cosine function. Our last problem, we're looking at g of x equals sine 1/2 x minus 4. First, we're going to identify our a. My a is 1. My b is a 1/2. There is no parenthesis to tell me an h, so h is 0. And my k is a negative 4. To graph, the first thing I need to find is my amplitude, which is the absolute value of a, which is the absolute value of 1, which is 1. So I know from whatever my midline is, I need to be able to go one more up and one more down. So we'll find midline in a minute. Next I need to find is my period, which is 2 pi all over the absolute value of b. That's 2 pi all over, b is 1/2. So this is the absolute value of 1/2, which is 2 pi all over 1/2, which tells me that my period is 4 pi. So I know that my x-axis needs to be rescaled because I cannot go a length of 4 pi with my current x-axis. So I need to be able to scale at least to 4 pi. So my x-axis will get me to at least 4 pi, and then I can repeat. Now let's go ahead and figure out where is this going to be centered at, which is our midline, which is the equation y equals k. My k value is a negative 4. So that tells me that my y-axis needs to go down to negative 4, but I need to make sure that I can still go one down further. So I need to make sure I'm at least down to negative 5. So there's my x-axis and my y-axis. My midline is at negative 4, which meant this is where my sine function should be all centered at, right here along this midline. My h and my k tells me what's happening. My h is a 0. H is the left and right movement, which is the horizontal movement. Since it's 0, that means we have no horizontal shift. My k is a negative 4, and k tells us our up and down movements. So that meant it was vertical. So we do have a vertical shift, and because it's a minus 4, we're going down 4. So I know that I'm going to go over 0, but my shift is going to be down 4. So my sine function's down here. Now we just need to find what our 5 key points are. Now remember, sine and cosine have very different formulas. This is a sine function, so we need to make sure we're looking at the sine formulas. Sine has 3 x-intercepts between the 0 and our period of 4. So 3 x-intercepts, which are now midline intercepts. So our first x-intercept, this is the equation, taking into account we have a vertical shift. So we have 0 and then negative 4. So my first intercept is at the corner point 0, negative 4, which is right here. My second intercept is this equation taking into account the vertical shift. My b is a 1/2. My k was a negative 4. So my second midline intercept is the coordinate point 2 pi negative 4. 2 pi negative 4. And my third midline intercept, this is the formula taking the vertical shift into account. My b is a 1/2 and my k is a negative 4. So I have 4 pi negative 4. So 4 pi negative 4. I have 3 midline intercepts. Let's make sure those intercepts are counted and the whole way through. My fourth point is my 1 max. And this is the formula taking the vertical shift into account. The b is a 1/2. My a is a 1. My k is a -4. So my max is the coordinate point pi -3. And now I need my min. This is my min formula, taking the vertical shift into account. My b is a 1/2, a is a 1, k is a -4. So 3 pi -5 is my min. So these were the 3 points that were the midline intercepts that should be on my blue line, and they are. And then I went as high as -3 and as low as -5. So this is my first period from 0 to 4 pi. After this, it just repeats. I'm supposed to go as high as -4, and actually I ended, and as low as -5. So here's my low -5, and now I need to go up to my -4, and then I am done. This is my sine function.